I'm gonna go ahead and start admitting people. Or would you guys like me to wait a little bit longer before admitting?
No, I think it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, cool.
Good evening, everybody. We're just going to wait a couple minutes here, let others join the meeting. Thank you for joining us. Brianna, is there anyone else waiting to get in?
Not right now. That's everyone, but I'm sure we'll have a few more filtering in as we go.
Okay. Let's give just another minute or two and then we'll get started. Thank you, everyone. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for our third community meeting for the Seminary Road Townhouse Project. Joined with me tonight, I have my colleagues at AHDC, Brianna Harris and Matt Rhodes. My name is John Frederick. I serve as the president of AHDC. With us as well as our land use attorneys, Bud Hart and Mary Catherine Gibbs, and our civil engineer, Daniel Petropoli. Before we get started, I just want to give a couple of ground rules on how the meeting's going to go. Then I'll give a brief introduction and turn it over to Matt Rhodes to provide a presentation on our project. This meeting is being recorded and we'll be uploading this recording to our website and YouTube page within the next 24 to 48 hours. If you're on an open mic at any point during this meeting, you will be recorded. If you don't want to be recorded, but do have questions, we suggest you use the chat box. The chat box is set to deliver messages directly to our meeting host. Regarding questions, we will take them at the end of the meeting. If you want to speak on an open mic, we ask that you use the raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you have any technical issues or if someone is on mute and we haven't caught it, please use the chat box to notify us. Lastly, after this presentation, we will be sending out an email with the slides and link to where we will put it in a written Q&A, as well as a link to where we will uploading the recording. So with that, I'm going to give a little introduction to AHDC and go through. Matt will go through the proposal. We'll provide a timeline, and then we'll turn it over for questions. Next slide. So in previous meetings, we've given a number of background slides on AHDC and who we are and our projects in town. We're going to skip the majority of that for this evening, but for those that might be joining us for the first time, I wanted to touch base a little bit on who AHDC is. AHDC is a 501c3 nonprofit affordable housing developer that was founded in 2004 to work exclusively in the city of Alexandria. To date, we own and operate over 700 units of housing in the city of Alexandria and serve over 1,000 residents. We have a growing staff of 11 folks, and we have a property management team with our third party that also operates here in town. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt to talk about our Seminary Road project. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Hello, everyone. My name is Matt Rhodes. I am a real estate associate at AHDC and the project manager for the Seminary Road project. Thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. As a reminder, as John mentioned, if you have any questions, please feel to put them in the chat box. We can address them at the end of the meeting. At the end of the meeting, you can also use the raise your hand feature, and we can call on you to do an open mic. So tonight I'd like to walk through our most recent DSUP completeness submission. I'm sure many in this meeting are aware of this project and may have been tracking its progress. I still would like to take a few minutes to discuss the site and the history of the project before turning our attention to the current proposal. So if we look just at the site, AHDC's project on Seminary Road is located on the west end of Alexandria. The project involves the assemblage of 3 parcels at 4547, 4555, and 4575 Seminary Road. In total, by combining these 3 parcels, we are creating a developable site of approximately 2.69 acres. Currently, there are 2 existing homes on the site. 4547 is a single-family home that is owned and operated by Sheltered Homes of Alexandria. Sheltered Homes of Alexandria is a local nonprofit that provides housing for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. They own and operate a number of group home and congregate living homes throughout the city. As part of this project, the current residents at 4547 Seminary Road will be relocated and will continue to receive services through SHA in the city. At the conclusion of the project, all residents will have the opportunity to move back into the new SHA units that are part of the project. AHDC and SHA recently completed the Belafonte redevelopment in in the Del Rey neighborhood of Alexandria. AHDC is excited to have the opportunity to partner with SHA on another project. Moving west on the site, the second existing home is at 4555. This parcel is owned by a third-party private landowner. Finally, the parcel furthest to the west is 4575 Seminary Road. This is a city-owned vacant parcel. At this point, it is mostly wooded and it sits next to the parking lot of the fire station, immediately to our site's west. There are some other aspects of the site to note, which ultimately had an impact on our design and the layout of the development. These include 2 existing storm sewer lines that run through the property, which are shown here in yellow. Both lines will remain, and they have existing easements that limit where we are able to build. Another feature of the site that made the design a challenge is a wetland of minimal ecological value, as determined by the Army Corps of Engineers and the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. This is located at the northwest corner of the site, bullet 2 here. As part of the development, we are maintaining a 50-foot buffer around the wetland in which we are not planning to build. Finally, the site topography has generally been a challenge and will require regrading in some locations to allow for the drive that is internal to the site and for the homes. Before moving on to our most recent design, I do want to discuss how we arrived at our proposal today and the evolution of the project. We've been working on this project for more than a year, and our first official submission to the city was in September of 2020. At that time, we proposed a larger multifamily building with approximately 52 rental apartment units. This is seen on the left side of your screen. The project had a large surface parking lot with an entrance off Seminary. It also included 12 ownership townhomes and 3 units for SHA on the right side of the project. Our initial design had some issues that didn't make it a good fit for this site. First, we received pushback on the scale of the project, specifically the larger rental building on the western edge of the project. Second, the entrance off Seminary, which was not part of any signalized intersection or aligned with Pickett Street, was not acceptable. And third, as we would later identify, the multifamily building was proposed to be built directly on top of the wetland at the northwest corner of the site. These issues required a reanalysis of the site and our development plan. This led to our second submission in February of 2021. This submission was significant in the life of the project because it saw a shift to a 100% ownership project. In this concept, there is no rental housing on the site. This design avoided many of the previous pitfalls, such as building in the wetland and the location of the site entry, which in this concept, we adjusted to align with Pickett Street at a signalized intersection. After this submission, we continued to revise the design. We submitted something called a Concept 2 to the city in May of this year. The layout of the site remains similar, but our team started adding details like landscaping and architecture. After conversations with the fire department, we also created a separate entrance to the site to ensure that the fire station maintained complete control over their existing entrance. This brings us to tonight's meeting and our current design. Today, we are presenting what is called a DSUP completeness submission, which we submitted to the city initially on August 6th and revised on September 14th. We are currently awaiting city comment on this submission. Like our previous homeownership submissions, the current plan for this site includes 31 townhomes, which are a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom units. We are still proposing a mix of 16 2-bedroom units and 15 3-bedroom units. Each townhome is 3 levels with a lower level garage, an open concept main living area, and upper floor bedrooms and baths. All townhomes are targeting households at or below 80% of area median income. The condominium flats building remains in the same location, which is shown here on the right side of your picture. The condominium flats building is an elevator building with 5 ownership flats that will again target households at or below 80% of area median income. There are an additional 3 units in this building that will be owned and operated by SHA. As I mentioned, these units will each have 4 beds and 4 baths, and each resident will have their own ADA accessible bathroom. The project has a number of other features that I'd like to highlight tonight. First, as we showed in previous concepts, the entrance to the site is still aligned with picket at a signalized intersection, and the entrance is again separated from the fire entrance. Second, the site provides a number of different transportation options. There are a total of 81 parking spaces in the development, including 19 surface parking spaces for the multifamily building and visitors. We are also including in this submission 2 EV charging stations as part of the project for use by residents and city staff who are working in the SHA units. Other transportation infrastructure includes outdoor bicycle parking and access to a bus stop that will be on Seminary Road. In the most recent submission, we have also enhanced our open space and landscape plan. The image shown here is the current landscaping plan with plantings throughout the site. As many of you are aware, the site is currently fairly wooded. While we have to remove trees to provide this level of housing, we are happy that as part of this development, we will meet the city's goal of 40% crown cover, which is well in excess of the city's minimum requirements of 25% coverage. As part of the development, we are also providing community space. This includes a 1,100 square foot community room in the condominium flats building. There are also numerous outdoor gathering spaces, including a terrace off of the community room, a central lawn with seating walls and benches, and sitting areas throughout the rear of the property. We are also making a number of improvements to the public right-of-way, including installing new sidewalks along Seminary, and we will also be undergrounding the existing overhead utilities that run the length of the project. Finally, as part of this project, we will be requesting a rezoning modification from the R8 zone to the RA zone. In previous submissions to the city, we had requested a change to a commercial zone in order to accommodate the redevelopment of the existing group home that was on site. Working with city staff, it was determined that a change to a commercial zone would not be required and that the current project could be accommodated within a residential zone. We'll be happy to answer any questions about this change during the Q&A following the presentation. Now I'd like to turn to the architecture, which is one of the most significant areas of improvement from the last concept. Here you can see the townhome designs from our last submission. The initial response to these designs was mixed at best. The majority of the feedback we received focused on the townhomes along Seminary, which are shown together on the bottom of the screen. We heard that these units were too modern, that they were bland, that the colors and material selection did not align with the neighborhood. So I am excited to show our new designs, which we feel are a real improvement over the units you see here. What you see here are the units that now front Seminary. Before, these units were too modern and had a mix of brick and siding with colors that did not fit with the homes on the street. We think our design team has dramatically improved these units. All units fronting Seminary are now brick faced. The more modern architectural style has also been replaced by some more traditional touches, such as the window bays on the 2-bedroom units and the cornice details along the roof lines. These same design elements are present in the condominium flats building, which gives the development some cohesive elements while retaining uniqueness between the different townhomes. The other important change, which is not easily seen here, is the change in building plane. Before, the faces of all units were in a single line, but with this revision, the 2-bedroom units now protrude 2 feet in front of the 3 bedrooms, which helps to break up the units and also provide more interior square footage in the 2-bedroom units. So for instance, what you see on your screen here on the left-hand side of the screen is a 2-bedroom, a 3-bedroom, and a 2-bedroom. And the breaking of these units up, given two feet of additional space and the window bays. Townhomes 14 to 22 are along the western edge of the property, which faces the fire station and the Encore apartment buildings. These units were always the most modern units in the development, but they've still seen some significant changes. This stick of towns is now a mixture of brick and siding, with the brick units closer to Seminary on the right side of your screen. All units feature more modern window treatments, doors, and have a vertical siding element above the doors that helps to separate the units. There are also some subtle changes in roof lines that help these units feel more distinct. Units 23 to 31 are on the interior of the site. The fronts of each home face the small interior courtyard and the Stonebridge neighborhood to the east. These homes are a mix of siding and brick, but retain many of the same traditional elements that we showed on Seminary. Again, we are showing window bays and mullions. The heights of the roof lines vary and have differing cornice details. Also, again, we are showing the 2-bedroom units with the additional 2 foot in depth, which provides interesting articulation and additional square footage for these homeowners. The final building on site is the condominium flats, which sits on the eastern property line. The condominium flats building holds the 3 4-bed, 4-bath SHA units and 5 additional 2-bedroom ownership flats. This building has an elevator, which allows the SHA units to be fully accessible, and it gives us the option to make the ownership flats accessible as needed. There's also a community room on the ground floor of this building that opens up to a small patio on the north side. Here, the building is shown from every angle. A number of architectural features are carried over to this building, including the window bays, the cornices, and the window details. The finishes also vary in color and material between brick and hardy siding in an attempt to break up the face of the building. Now, before ending this discussion on the unit designs, I do want to speak in a bit more detail about the building heights. All townhomes in the development have a maximum height of 35 feet. The top image that you're seeing on this slide shows the height of our proposed buildings on Seminary in relation to our closest neighbor to the east. Even though our townhomes are 3 stories, the actual height difference to this nearby home is minimal. The difference in elevation between the townhomes on Seminary and our closest neighbor is approximately 7 to 10 feet. The bottom picture shows a representative home across Seminary. The townhomes fronting Seminary, which, if you see my cursor, are here seen from the side, are approximately 10 to 13 feet higher than a representative home across Seminary. Here are 2 more perspectives of the site. The top section shows the condominium flats building in relation to the homes on our eastern property line. Now, it may be difficult to see in this image, but the adjacent homes are shown in a blue transparency overlaid in front of the condominium flats building. The roof lines of 3 of our closest neighbors on the eastern property line are similar here to the roof lines of the condominium flats building. A similar depiction can be seen in the bottom image, which incorporates height and distance from the adjacent properties. And this is a southern perspective looking down through the site, looking north. The height of the condominium building itself varies depending on the grade and which portion of the building you're looking at. As you can see from the top image, we have a step down in this building that changes the building height as you work your way down the hill. The average finished height, though, of this building is approximately 33 feet. What the upper image also shows is a fence that runs nearly the entire length of the property line and plantings and trees, which all help to screen the condominium building from our neighbors to the east. So before opening up for questions, I do want to review the project schedule. As I mentioned, we submitted our revised DSUP submission in September, and we expect to receive a response by the end of this month. If we are deemed complete, we plan to present the project at the December sessions of Planning Commission and City Council. Leading up to City Council, we will also present the project to the Alexandria Housing Affordability Advisory Committee and the Landlord-Tenant Relations Board, which are tentatively scheduled for October and November. If the current schedule you see here holds, our team would work on the final site plan and permitting process throughout 2022, and unit construction would tentatively be scheduled to begin next winter. If we look past just this proposal and the design of the site, the main goal of this project really is to create long-term affordable home ownership opportunities for residents of Alexandria. Currently, AHDC is working with the Champlain Housing Trust and Grounded Solutions Network to understand how we can best implement a shared equity ownership program to ensure homes are affordable into the future. We are also working with partners to connect interested buyers to homeownership education programs, down payment assistance, and affordable loan products to help buyers qualify for these units and access mortgages that they can really afford. Anyone interested in purchasing a home or learning more about the home buying process can sign up for our homeownership interest list at the link on your screen. We are also planning to hold introductory meetings for interested buyers this winter. With that, I would like to thank everyone for their time this evening. If you'd like any additional information on this project, you can visit our website at the link shown on your screen. Here you can find the current DSUP plan, which we discussed tonight, along with all previous submissions. You can also reach out to communications@housingalexandria.org if you have any other comments or questions. And with that, we'd like to open it up for your questions.
Thanks, Matt. Just as a reminder, before we start the Q&A, you can ask your questions using the raise hand feature located at the bottom of your screen. I will call on you and you'll be able to speak your question or ask your question out loud. Please do not click lower hand until you have been called on, so I know that you're still waiting to be called on. Please keep in mind this meeting is being recorded and will be posted to our website and YouTube pages. You can also ask a question anonymously by submitting it into the chat box. This will go directly to meeting hosts. We will be taking questions until 8 p.m. and if there are questions that remain, we will post them answered on our website. If you happen to have any other questions and comments after this meeting or while reviewing follow-up material, you can send them to communications@housingalexandria.org. So I am going to start reading out questions now. First one that we have in the chat box is, what was the outreach process for this meeting? Participation here is not very strong. That was the question.
All right, Catherine, do you want me to take this?
Yeah, you and Matt, that would be great because I think
Yeah,
there's
sure.
outreach
So,
done by AHDC.
Yeah, I mean, we have a project website going on this. We've emailed it all to interested parties that have signed up for this. We have notified, sent out e-blasts through the city's programs that we are having this community meeting. We've reached out individually to stakeholders that we know are of interest and actually met with a few stakeholders prior to this meeting that are immediate neighbors for us. So we've reached out through a number of channels and certainly have spoken with our residents as well about the program that's coming out.
And didn't you also let Seminary Hill Association know that this meeting was happening?
We did. Yes, that's right. That's a good point.
Next, I'm going to call on Carter Fleming.
Yes. Hi, thank you all very much. And yes, Seminary Hill was indeed notified about this meeting, and we sent out a blast email to our listserv informing them of the meeting. So we have promoted this information, and we put it on our Facebook page as well. So I want to thank you all for responding to our concerns, the neighbors, and in general. I think this has been a good example of how communication can work and make a project better for everybody. So I do want to thank John and his whole team for working with the neighbors so closely in trying to come to a common ground. I just had one question. I appreciate the change in the design fronting on Seminary Road, and I certainly have no architectural skills at all. I'm just wondering if Matt or somebody can say, is there a construction reason why the 3-bedroom units that are grouped in twos fronting Seminary have to be the same color brick? In other words, it looks like it's a big mass of one color of brick. And I don't know whether that's a construction thing, a design thing, or what. The two examples on the right where the 3 bedrooms are coming forward and are bigger. Is there a reason why they're the same brick? Is that just a design thing or a real necessity?
I think, go ahead, Matt.
I think that would be a design decision.
Okay. I just wondered, it just looks, they just look a little bulkier because they're the same color compared to the smaller units. So I was just curious what the decision making was on that. But
and I think that's an easy one to take on, Carter. I appreciate that comment, because I think that's a good comment. But I think that's something I think in the final design, a modest change in a change that's very, like, you can see with your eye, a visual change isn't a bad suggestion for one of those homes.
Especially if, as I'm just thinking through it here now, especially if we didn't add an additional brick color to it, maybe just used one of the brick colors on the other instead of having all of the one together, use the same brick colors here, but broke that down. That's certainly something I think we can talk to our design team, or maybe pull one of the bricks from the interior of the site. I don't know if we're using the same colors in, but Carter, just so I can get my head wrapped around it, I think the unit on the bottom right is the one that is probably the one that in our, what do you think of the brown with the two kind of rain gutters in the middle? Is that one that you're talking about as well, those two?
Well, of course, the brown is lighter, so it doesn't scream out as much, but I do think a lot of projects in Alexandria that are more successful do, try to vary the brick face from unit to unit, so it just doesn't look like that's one large kind of unit. That's all I was saying, but I'm not saying I'm a designer or a builder or anything. It's just visually, if you wanted our reaction, I just think it looks larger than it probably is, just because of the color blockage. But
let us take a look at that. That's a good comment.
Yeah, thank you for the comment.
Thank you for the answers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carter. The next question that we have is, how are city submissions posted for the general public? I could only find them updated on an old blog post from March 2021 on the AHDC website.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, so they're all on our site. I can, they're I don't know exactly how they are listed on our site, but they're on our site. They might have been an update to a blog post that we send out to our folks. I think that, or to our list. I think that we have addressed that. But then I don't know how the city provides. I mean, they're all public record that can be downloaded as well. But we
Yeah, and
have
the city,
also,
if I could, John, the city doesn't regularly post every site plan that's submitted. I think when they get to the DSUP submission, I think they include that on a spreadsheet that they keep on their website. Bill is on the call here. He might be able to answer that better, but concept 1 and concept 2s, I don't think are regularly posted
Gotcha.
on the city's website.
in addition, or anybody that has signed up for our interested parties list, we've actually sent out lists that, you know, that they're available. So.
Thanks, John. The next question is in reference to traffic around the site. What is the anticipated impact on an already congested area, and was a study performed during a time period outside of the pandemic?
I'm happy to take that one, John. So a project of this size doesn't have to do a full traffic impact study. It just doesn't warrant a full study. Our consultants, the Grove Slade, did actually a traffic memo that looked at the number of cars per peak hour, and the number of cars per peak hour, I think, was relatively low. I can go and pull up that number while we're looking, but it was much lower, or it was very low. And while the road at Seminary, as we all know, is a congested road, this intersection is at a light. It's an existing light. So any cars that are coming out are going to be coming out in the time cycle of that light. And one of the things that I think that is regularly important to remember in Alexandria is most of the traffic that's here is going through us. It's not going to us. And so there's a lot of commuter traffic that's coming up from Fairfax County that's trying to get over to 395 here. And so this isn't going to greatly increase the traffic here. We're actually going to get cars off the street if they're coming home to these units, as opposed to having to drive further south into Fairfax County for community purposes. So we think that, as based on the number of vehicles per peak hour, this is actually going to have a very relatively low traffic impact.
Thanks, Mary Catherine. The next question is just, when would the construction phase end?
I think at this point, we're still working out the exact construction schedule and construction sequencing and timing. We expect approximately 18 months of construction between site work and actual vertical construction. But how that would be sequenced, how much time would be spent on Seminary versus interior to the site, or the condominium flats building, we don't have that at this point.
Thanks, Matt. The next question is, how will questions or comments submitted after this evening be addressed by AHDC? I can actually answer that one. We're going to do a written transcript of the Q&A session. So any questions that are submitted after, or you don't have time to get it answered while we're in the session right now, will be answered. And then we're going to be sending out follow-up materials in an email to all of you, as well as the interest list, and they'll be posted on our site.
Before that, Mary Catherine, do you want to, can you maybe walk us through if we would happen to be deemed complete, like the next process to get to Planning Commission, City Council, and what that
Sure.
looks like?
Yeah, and I want to say, because I did look up the trip generation memo, and I just wanted to be very specific. The net new trips per peak hour in is +3, out is +6, for a total of +9. The PM peak hour in is +9, out is +6, for a total of 15. So that's the number that was in our trip generation memo. In terms of what the process is after having been deemed, if we are deemed complete by the city, we are then required to post the property with a sign that designates what the proposal is, with everyone's phone numbers of representative parties. My number will be on it. The city's number will be on it. Then the city requires that we send out required notice by certified mail to adjacent property owners within a certain distance of the property. And so that one notice will be sent out in advance of the meeting. There also are 2 other public meetings that this project will have to attend. So there will be 2 other opportunities to talk on the project. One is, and Matt put this up on the chart earlier, the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee, where the affordable housing plan will have to be recommended to it's asked to be recommended to the City Council at that meeting. And then the Landlord Tenant Relations Board meeting, which is where we will be discussing a tenant relocation plan with that group. And so there's 2 other public hearings before what would be the Planning Commission City Council hearings. Planning Commission is held on the first Tuesday of the month, so it would be the first Tuesday of December if we're deemed complete. And City Council is the second Saturday after that first Tuesday. So there'll be 4 public hearing opportunities in order for people to continue to engage. And in addition to that, I would like to add that on a regular basis, AHDC has been available for discussions, for emailing, for discussion. We've actually met in several neighbors' backyards. And John and Matt have met more than once with those neighbors. Bud Hart also met with them. He also walked around up and down Seminary Road and handed out flyers and also handed out information about the project and about the first meeting, so that everybody who wanted to be involved got involved then and has been continuously involved since then. And so there's been a significant amount of community outreach, and it will continue. And AHDC continues to be available for anybody to ask questions between now and when the project gets constructed, if we're lucky enough to be approved.
The only thing that I will add to that is this schedule here has us going to the Alexandria Housing Affordability Advisory Committee in October. That's really about a week or 2 away. We will, the plan is to brief that committee in October, and then, get questions and feedback, and probably look for, if we get that far, a recommendation in November. So there'll be 2.
So there could be 2 other hearings. Okay.
Two chances to go that we're going to go to
Great.
the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, Marika.
The next question that we have is referencing flooding in the area. How are you improving the infrastructure, water and sewer, and how are you improving drainage?
Do you want me to take that one, John, or you want to take it? We have our engineer here with us.
Yeah. Well, Mary Catherine, why don't you start? And Dan.
Sure. Well, so Daniel, whose name I always butcher whenever I try and pronounce his last name, is our really good engineer at Walter Phillips, and has worked in the city for a number of years. But the city's stormwater regulations are pretty stringent. If you are building a project in Alexandria, you have to meet 2 different criteria as part of the process. You actually have to improve, you actually have to have water detention, and you have to deal with water detention, and you have to deal with water quality. And so I guess we should say quantity and quality is the way Daniel describes it. So we will have to, as part of this project, capture the water that's on our property, and we do that through a number of what's called BMPs. They're called best management practices. They'll have some green roofs on the tops of these buildings, but mostly it's the direction of the water captured in your downspouts into sort of like a raised planter, if you can think of it along those lines, that actually holds the water. It has a filtration device inside those all those planters, so that while it holds the water, it's also filtering the water before it then is released into the stormwater system that actually flows through this property. And so we have to capture the water that's on the property as we move forward. We also then have to treat it so that we're reducing the pollutants in that water before it gets into the storm system. And so Daniel, that's a layman's depiction of what our stormwater regulations require us to do. But what I always say, and I believe this is true, that we actually, every development in Alexandria actually has to make the stormwater condition better than it is that you see it now. Now water just freely flows through this property without any ability to capture and or treat it. And now we will be capturing and treating that water as it moves through. So I'm going to turn it over to Daniel.
Sure. I don't have much to add to that. That was a great summary, Mary Catherine. Generally speaking, the quantity and quality controls that we'll need to adhere to for this project. So we're required based on city code to ensure that runoff leaving the site will be released below the pre-development peak flow rates for the 2, 10, and 100-year storms for this project. And so that is meeting the city ordinance requirements. And from a treatment standpoint, we have a handful of BMP facilities proposed on this site, a number of bioretention planter boxes, as well as permeable pavement. And then we have some downstream filtering practices and detention, which are intended to meet both the city and state requirements for stormwater quality. So there's a handful of infrastructure measures proposed here. In addition to that, we have sewer inlets throughout the roadways proposed on this project as well, so that some of the runoff that's going to be generated from this site is going to be captured and not just running over land. And so that will be captured and funneled to these treatment devices before it ultimately leaves the site into those 2 storm sewer networks that we noted on the plans that are existing conditions.
The one thing I want to just point out there, because I think it's an important part of this, and Daniel and Mary Catherine both mentioned it, and I think Matt hit it with his cursor as it was being discussed. But our surface parking lots that we have created here have permeable pavers, which means that water will run through it instead of collecting it and running off. It's a stormwater that many of you may be aware of, but it is something that we were able to get into this site to make sure that there's more water getting into the ground and going instead of running off and creating kind of flooding and flash flooding type of conditions.
Thank you all. The next question is referencing the fence. Can the fence along the eastern border be higher? 6 feet doesn't seem high enough. And can trees be placed closer together?
I'm happy to take the fence question if somebody wants to take the tree question, but I'm happy to take others. So I looked at the city's ordinance again since the last time we were on the property. And the only provision for increasing the height of a fence above 6 feet is if you're between yourself and the residential zone is on the other side is a school zone, then you can go up to 10 feet. And so if we were to seek to raise the level of the fence, we would need to get a variance. And I'm not saying that we couldn't apply for one, but that would be a separate application to ask for a variance to exceed the 6-foot height limit. I looked into whether or not we could get what's called a modification or a variation under the site plan ordinance, but the site plan ordinance only allows variations to the like the subdivision regulations, like size of lots, side yard setbacks, things of that nature. It doesn't allow us to get a variation on the height as this part of this process, but a variance could be applied for to add to the height of that fence. But putting trees closer together, we would want to make sure, and we can talk to our landscape architect about that. We would just want to make sure that that gives them sufficient spacing for a healthy growth situation. And one of the things that we did in between this application and this submission and the last one, Matt described it as an enhancement of the landscaping, is we intermixed deciduous with evergreen trees so that both the ability to have fuller trees throughout the growing season is there. But in addition, when those leaves are on the ground, the evergreen trees will be growing taller. And so they're interspersed. So you have a variety of buffers between you and the building, but between that eastern property line and the building.
Thanks, Mary Catherine. Next question we have is, why will units 14 through 22 be so different than the others? Can you describe the impact cost on having 2 different architecture styles in the same project?
I don't really understand the second question of the cost of having 2 architecture styles. I mean, I will speak to this, is that we thought there was room to have a little bit more of a modern opportunity, so that not everything was so the same on the stick of towns that was facing the fire station, which may or may not have future redevelopment and doesn't face the more traditional Stonebridge and Seminary Road. This is where we thought that we could mix up the design a little bit to create some unique features throughout the project.
Thanks, John. The next question is asking which parts of concept 2 submission do not comply with current zoning and small area plan for the site. May you please list them?
Could you repeat the question, Brianna?
Yeah, sure. Which portions of concept 2 submission do not comply with current zoning and small area plan for the site? Might you please list them?
Well, we're not at concept 2 anymore. We're actually at the DSUP submission. And what we asked for was a rezoning so that we could have a townhouse development and a small multifamily building in this development. So that's called a rezoning application. That's to the RA zone, which is a residential zone. Between concept 2 and the residential zone, we were able to work with the city to determine that we didn't need a commercial designation for the SHA houses, that we fit within the definitions under the zoning ordinance so that we can work within the RA zone. And so that's the request to change. There is a modification to the side yard setback for these townhouses that you're looking at, because they're, since we are considered the condominium project, so this whole thing is considered multifamily, you have a minimum side yard setback of 16 feet, and we are within 15 feet of that property line. So we're asking for that minor modification for 1 foot. And based upon the use that's next to it and the potential in the future that, something may be changing over there, we think that's a reasonable request for a modification of 1 foot. We're also providing a front sidewalk there that's going to go all the way along those front houses, and that if there's ever an ability to connect to the city's open space to the rear, that would be a publicly accessible sidewalk that could take people back there to, again, if that ever were to be developed. So again, we think that's a minor modification.
Okay. The next question is, what is considered the ground floor for the townhouses on the northwest side? How high will they reach compared to surrounding buildings on the east and west?
Let's see, northwest side.
So the northwest side, sorry, these are the townhomes on the northwest side. If these are the ones that the question is referring to, these are the townhomes we just discussed that face the fire station. If you were to look at the site today, there is a grade where it's higher on this property line and then slopes. That grade, for the most part, will remain, and that's what gives you a 2-story look on this side. But then as you go to the interior roadway, they would look like any of the other 3-story units. So each one of them has a garage coming in off the interior roadway on a 3rd level, a lower level, and then the ground floor level is where the living floor is, and then again a 3rd story. From the western property line, these are approximately 23 feet, I believe, and from the interior roadway, they would be the 35 feet, similar to all the other townhomes in the development. Just trying to see, I don't believe I have a picture in this presentation of
The rear elevation.
Yeah, so here is the side elevation. Actually, you can sort of see how it sits into the hill. So here would be your main living level with the garage level slightly lower into the hillside.
Thanks, Matt. The next question is, I just had it, give me 1 second. What's to prevent multiple families from living in a single unit?
I'm happy to take that one, John. There's regularly rules and regulations of the condominium association that will be adopted that will require that each unit be occupied solely by one family unit.
Thanks, Mary Catherine. The next question is, will ownership of units move down in generations? How will that work?
I think
They
maybe,
could.
yeah, I was gonna say, John, you might want to answer this. They
Yeah.
absolutely could. I mean,
Yeah,
you're
they
gonna buy
absolutely-
your condo, you're gonna buy your condo townhouse, you're gonna own it. There will be
That's
a
right.
deed, there'll be a deed restriction to maintain it as an affordable unit that will require, if you ever wanted to sell it, that you had to sell it under the same guidelines, or, you know, they will increase over time, like the same income guidelines as recognized by the VHDA. You can only sell to people who qualify under those same guidelines. And you'll likely have to put it, what normally the city has done in other instances is you put it on the market and you go to the group of people who have already pre-qualified under the city's homeownership assistance program as a family who qualifies under the income guidelines for that unit. Now, if a family decides not to sell and to convey it to another family member as opposed to selling, or if a person dies, I don't think that we can legally say that someone can't convey their unit in a will. I don't think that that's something that you as a condominium association can end, but yes, I think
No.
you can. Go ahead, John.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, and they absolutely can, right? The idea here is that you are building long-term family and generational wealth, right? So if somebody decides to sell their unit, they're more than right to do that under the restrictions and guidelines that are put in place. But if they want to pass that unit along to, you know, generation to generation to control housing costs and build generational wealth, they're able to do that as well.
Thanks, John. The next question is, how much will this cost, and is this a fully funded effort?
Yeah, so that's a tough question to answer because we're still, you know, a year to, you know, a little bit more out from starting construction, but we're currently pricing it around $22 to $23 million for the entire project. And we have a number of funding sources, including city money, lined up to, well, not lined up because we will have to be approved, but put together to fund the project. Those funding sources include Virginia Housing REACH grant money. We will apply for Virginia Housing Trust Fund dollars. We will apply for Federal Home Loan Bank grant dollars. We are exploring the use of the new market tax credit program, and we would use City of Alexandria Housing Opportunity / Housing Trust Fund dollars as we would in a number of our other real estate projects in the city. So it is a full stack of funding to get there. In addition to that, where this is obviously different than some of our other projects that AHDC has created, is that we will sell these units. So we will have the sale of 36 units to help cover that cost, which we would bridge with a construction loan like any developer would, and then use the sales proceeds to pay down the construction loan.
The next question is, the city has said it was going to steer away from new builds and focus on rehabbing buildings. Why is this different?
I don't know that I don't know where that question came from, but I don't know that that's true. The city of Alexandria has focused a lot on new construction over the last 5 to 10 years. I would say almost more towards new construction than renovation of projects. AHDC has done both, but in the last 5 years, AHDC alone has closed on 2 new construction rental projects and 1 rehab project and 1 acquisition project. A number of other nonprofit developers that do work in the city have done new construction projects. I'm not going to call out all of their names, but off the top of my head, I can think of 3 other new construction projects that were done by other nonprofits, including the Alexandria Redevelopment and Housing Authority. So the city's Office of Housing has very much focused on new construction and the addition of new construction affordable housing projects in the city, in addition to acquisition and renovation.
Thanks, John. Next question is, How will this model affect future developments in the city? This is also a two-part question, so I'm going to just say that part first.
I don't know that it will affect future development in the city. We certainly, AHDC is looking to build a home ownership program that we can provide first-time affordable housing home ownership opportunities, and we hope that we can make this model successful so that we can replicate it in other parts of town if we have that opportunity. There are very, very few, if any, other affordable home ownership new construction projects under construction. And so, but there, you know, how it impacts other development, I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something, but Mary Catherine, is there something that
I guess the way I would look at it, John, is that every project in Alexandria is reviewed on its merits. While you look at precedent and you see examples of things in other projects, each project is run through its development review process specifically for its site. And so I would say every project has to be reviewed on its own merits, and impacts are relative.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
The second part of that question, oh, sorry, go ahead, John.
I was going to say the second part, Brianna.
Yeah. The second part is what's to stop AHDC to buy a couple other houses on adjacent plots and building high density housing?
Well, I mean, we are applying for this development. We would have this project approved. And if we wanted to change that to high density housing, we would have to go through a full, you know, rezoning and development process. I don't know. The only adjacent single family house to this is Miss Muncie's house. We haven't spoken to her about acquiring that property, so I don't know, you know, how. It's a hypothetical question, but I guess any process or any change in density would have to go